everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and I am back again today because I just finished up the first book in the Rihannsu Saga, which was My Enemy, My Ally by Diane Duane. At first, I didn't really get into too much about what this was, and then once I started it, I did read a little bit just to kind of figure out what this saga was, because I'm reading this gigantic collected version here, which is actually a collection of 4 books, plus some like additional story that they published later on, I guess. Mostly written by Diane Duane, and the first book in the saga here is My Enemy, My Ally, which was published, let's see, it's the number 18, TNG number 18, published in 1984. So one of the early TNG numbered books. Very cool cover. I always like the old school covers there. But again, I'm reading it from the big book because I have that and I've not busted it out yet. Let's jump right into the back here. Now, I don't know how to say this name, and I didn't want to look it up for spoilers' sake, so I said it this way. A-L. And maybe that's not right. It's A-E-L. A-L. Sounds good. A-L Taralu is a noble and dangerous Romulan commander. But when the Romulans kidnap Vulcans intending to harness their mind power through genetic experimentation, A.L. decides on treason. Captain Kirk, her old enemy, joins her in a secret pact to destroy the research laboratory and free the captive Vulcans. When the Romulans discover their plan, the neutral zone seethes with schemes and counter-schemes, sabotage, and war. Again, I don't ever read the back covers before I read a book, because I just feel it gives away too much of the story. And man, that one surely did. That was way too much information. So I kind of jumped into this whole thing blind and just grabbed this big giant book and started reading, and then was happy to find out that it's this kind of long saga of all these books. And if they are all as good as this first one, then I am in for a treat. So I just finished this up tonight, and just a really fun, before we get into super like spoiler territory, just a really fun TOS story. If you're looking for, kind of like some Romulan adventure, this has got you covered. It really kind of shows you a little bit more about the Romulan culture and takes them a lot deeper than what you get to see in the very few appearances they have on the original series. And actually, it does kind of tie into the original series episode as well, the Enterprise incident. So, let's jump right into it. So basically, the story starts out with, I would say, the main character, who is the Romulan Commander, A.L. A.L. I'm going to say that the whole time, and I hope it's okay. Anyway, and she has been kind of outcast. She's been assigned to a ship full of kind of rebels and outcasts and people like that because she's gone against the High Command. She has seen the High Command trying to implement like strategies that are just not right in her mind with like the Romulan code of honor. And because of what she's done and the senators, that she's upset, even though she is a very popular and very successful commander, she has been sent to the Outlands in basically a junkie ship with a junkie crew to do missions until she gets herself killed. But she has a plan. She's very, very crafty, and right away you can tell that she's got this kind of underlying plan that they're not letting on yet, but basically she's sending, secret messages within other secret messages. Typical Romulan, stuff. So you got that's a very good start for this, where you're kind of set off just showing you this character, and then just you're getting this kind of hint of something more going on. So you go back, or you start now with the Enterprise, and you have a very fun little scene where they're in the Enterprise rec room, and they're looking at a new game that's been developed by the rec room, kind of the guy in charge of the rec room, I guess, and his name is Harb Tanzer, and he has designed a new form of chess. So they normally have the 3D chess, but he's developed this crazy holographic and transporter-oriented 4D chess, where you can move pieces in and out of the board and basically just kind of a step up from the normal chess game. And Kirk is playing a game of that against Spock, and is kind of losing a little bit, and just basically decides to give it up and let Bones finish it. And Bones takes over the game against Spock, and he actually wins, to like everyone's surprise, especially Spock. And Bones reveals later on that he's actually a little bit of a skilled at that, but was able to beat Spock's moves through using illogical moves of his own. So a very fun little opening scene there too, with just Bones getting the upper hand and kind of everyone being surprised, and I really enjoyed that as well. So the Enterprise is then ordered to assemble a fleet, or assemble with a fleet, near the neutral zone. Something is up. They're not told exactly what's going on, but because of kind of all the ships that have been called together, which is the Intrepid, the Constellation, the Enterprise, and a destroyer class, the Inijao. And the Inijao is like I said, it's a destroyer, and it's from and crewed by people from the planet Deneb, the Denebians. And very kind of interesting, like little sci-fi side there, where there's all these different, very non-humanoid Starfleet officers that crew this vessel of this destroyer, without getting too much into that. But anyway, they're assigned basically to patrol the neutral zone because there's something that's going to be going on. Back on the Romulan side of things, AL is basically given this fleet of old Klingon crafts and is given the mission to pretty much go out into the neutral zone and start trouble, and hopefully start a war between the Klingons and the Federation, since she's flying in these old Klingon ships. So she kind of sees where this is going and knows it's a time to set her plan into action, which she does. And in her inspection job, she kind of goes over to inspect the ship. On her way back, in like the one moment she has when she's shielded from sensors, she launches a message to her crew aboard the Bloodwing, who are out in another part of space, kind of awaiting her message, basically. So she gets that message out and gets back to the Cuirass and kind of continues on with the game as it is. Back on the fleet, they have this kind of large conference aboard the Inijao. I don't know if I'm saying that right either, but a lot of these words were a little off, but that's okay. I just say them how they come up in my head, and that's how they are for the rest of the book. And what does it really matter if it's not right anyway? But the Inijao, they have this kind of giant conference there where they're trying to confer and figure out exactly what's going on. And they kind of figure out that Starfleet has gotten word that there's something going on out there, and they know that possibly they might have to enter the neutral zone, but they can't actually do that, So they have to like kind of be very careful about how they're going to go about this. So that's when they develop their initial kind of plan of what they're going to do, which is just this general patrol of the neutral zone. There is also the trouble of these ion storms, which are going on in the area, and that's kind of causing some communications trouble between the different fleets. So back on the Romulan side of things, you've got AL, and she is now putting her plan into motion, and she has sabotaged the Cuirass, basically, and has ejected herself in her little one-man craft. And she's done it basically so skillfully that it's not going to look like she's done anything wrong. And she has been picked up by the crew of the Bloodwing, which received her message and picked her up, and now she's able to enact her master plan. And she sets a course for the neutral zone right away. So the patrol, of course, the fleet sees her coming. She's not trying to hide that she's coming, and she comes directly in contact with the fleet and wants to set up a meeting. And of course, they're all like, what? But okay. So they set up their first meeting with her, where she gives them basically lays the whole thing out on the line of what is going on. She has defected at this point, basically, because of what the Romulan Empire is planning. And what they are planning is, well, as was spoiled in the back of this thing. See, if you didn't know by now, it's just so cool. But you knew right away. What they're doing is these terrible experiments on Vulcans where they're actually taking their brain matter and like combining it and using the power of this giant Vulcan brain matter and then kind of channeling their own thoughts through that to incapacitate giant groups of Vulcans, and eventually they could do that against anyone. And of course, this was the reason that she was going against this, because it's a terrible, dishonorable plan, any way you look at it. So her mission was to destroy this facility where everything is going on. And basically, if they can take care of this one facility where all this matter is, all this information is, they can take out the whole plan and set the whole thing back. So that's the idea. But how are they going to get to the facility? She has a plan for that as well. Not one that the crew of the Enterprise is going to take too kindly to, but her idea is to capture the Enterprise and make it look like her ship, the Bloodwing, fought and defeated the Enterprise, captured her crew, and is in command and is taking her back to the Romulan Empire as a trophy. Most everyone is against it at first, but once they kind of talk it all out in some really well done conference scenes, they're able to kind of come to the idea that this threat has to be stopped, and there's no option but to go through with this plan. So they enact the plan. Before they leave, they basically missed a very important part. Right when they're kind of getting ready to enact this plan, they lose contact with the Intrepid. Now, the Intrepid is a ship crewed entirely by Vulcans. Oh no. They lost contact in an ion storm and are presumed now to be captured by the Romulans, who are going to use them and experiment on them and on their brain matter. So, like, the stakes have been doubled now because there's this whole crew that they have to find and they have to rescue. So that's the plan. The Constellation, the Inajao, are going to stay back in Federation space while the Bloodwing tows a beat-up-looking kind of fake defeated Enterprise into the neutral zone towards Romulus. They have a couple of extra additions to the plan to make things a little bit smoother, and they have these subspace buoys that they can launch along the way when they encounter trouble to kind of slow down communications so that they can't immediately get, jumped by a whole bunch of Romulans there. So the mission goes very well at first. Mr. Scott is very upset first off because they have to fake this damage to the engine, and he's incredibly upset about that. But there's a cute little scene that they have where Ale offers Mr. Scott some nice Romulan ale in exchange for what she had to do to the engines, which makes him a little bit happier. So, but anyway, they're towing their way through the neutral zone where they encounter their first patrol, where you have this nice little space battle where it first begins, where the Bloodwing can't really show that it's in league with the Enterprise, so they have Kirk and Spock and everyone like locked up in the brig, and they have to fake this whole punch them in the face scene and kind of just this whole big scene faked in front of them, which in the end they still have to end up fighting them off in this very exciting space battle before they can get to the station there on Talon 5. So they do get to Talon 5 and they come up with their plan of attack, and they decide they all have to basically don these gray fatigues, and you've had this kind of cool story right there, kind of in the meanwhile of them going of the Romulan crew and the Starfleet crew mixing together, getting to know each other, and just kind of working together, like on the bridge and through these different stations to get this job done. So they have their plan together. They're going to send this fairly sizable landing party, like hundreds of people, down to the station to storm the various departments. They have to find the computer data. They have to find the crew of the Intrepid. They have to find the Vulcan mind matter. So they have all these different things that they have to do there. They're going to beam down there to do that. As soon as they beam down there to do that, treachery. One of the Romulan officers, or the Rihannsu officers, aboard the Bloodwing, actually like basically the second in command, betrays AL and has been kind of fomenting this whole fomenting, fomenting, I think. Anyway, he has been planning this treachery from the beginning because he is actually the cousin of the Romulan commander from that episode where Kirk and Spock steal the cloaking device. So that was his long-awaited revenge against Spock and Kirk for how they humiliated her in that episode. So also some really good books about the commander that I've read before too. So don't get off track. So now you have these two different action sequences going on here as the big finale to the book. Awesome. You have Mr. Scott with Uhura, Chekhov, and Sulu with like a desperate plan to defend the Enterprise from the... I mean, they were kind of surprised. The Romulans beamed in, were able to shut down some key systems. So now they're kind of stuck on the auxiliary bridge. A lot of things are shut off. And they have to find a way to free the ship from maybe about 90 or so Romulan invaders who have the upper hand at this point. They come up with a fairly ingenious plan. They're able to raid the armory of every grenade, phaser rifle, and everything that they have. And they kind of strap everything to Sulu and Chekhov and send them crawling through the Jeffries tubes and tunnels to get more help. On the planet, they begin their assault, or it's not a planet, it's a station. On the station, they begin their assault, and you have these very fun scenes of kind of close corridors, phaser fighting between the Romulans and Starfleet, and the Romulans that are working with Starfleet, and AL and Kirk, and just very interesting stuff. They get to a certain point in the station where Spock is all of a sudden like, oh, and he can't function anymore because they've reached the point in the station where this Vulcan mind matter is now being used to suppress all these Vulcans. So they're able to kind of track down where it's at, they're able to shut it off, and then they're able to find where the Vulcans are. And this is like a really kind of devious thing that they've done, because basically what this mind thing does is it just completely oppresses like your thought and your will, and like all these Vulcans were just like zombies, just kind of like laying down on the ground without any will or thought, or they couldn't think or do anything. So they're able to shut that off. They're able to get to the crew of the Intrepid. The captain is gone. Of course, he's been tortured for secrets by the Romulans. But the Vulcans, somewhat recovered, are able to collectively join like all of their minds together. And then through that, they're able to track down the location of their captain, which was another really cool part in the end there. Even the non-Vulcans in the group, they're able to like feel the collective mind pull of the Vulcans as they're like pulled towards where their captain is. So they're able to rescue Captain Suvak, who's been tortured by the Romulans, of course, for secrets. Take a breath, man. Woo. Okay, anyway, this book is really good, and we're in the exciting conclusion of it now. So in the exciting conclusion, now we're going back to the Enterprise. And Sulu and Chekhov have kind of come across the rec room, the event that goes to the rec room, where there's quite a bit of the crew in there, and of course, Harb Tanzer, who created the wonderful 4D chess. So it's going to come into play, hopefully, right? Yes. So they get in there, and with all of their grenades and phaser rifles, are able to like arm a large portion of the Enterprise crew, which was initially stuck in there. And they're thinking, well, how can we get out of here? What can we do? And then Harb has a wonderful idea. Well, has an idea, which turns out to be effective, and works to clear the ship. And this little 4D chess thing has a very tiny transporter in it. And they're able to use that tiny transporter to transport these live grenades to these various groups of Romulans that have taken over the ship. And that's how they're able to basically retake control. And what I liked about this part was that they realized that they had to do it, but even though that they had to do it, they weren't like celebrating that they were doing it, because they knew that it's like, I mean, this is like not like an honorable way to take out these people. We have to take them out. There's nothing we can do. But So it was interesting. I thought that that's how they ended that threat. So now you have back on the station. They've rescued everybody. They have everyone now. They need to get into the final, basically the final area there to get the, like, where all the data is stored. And it's now like the most shielded area of the station, and nothing can get through. But luckily, they have a MacGuffin. So earlier in this book, they introduced a member of the Enterprise crew was a Horta, like a rock-like being. So now the Horta, who was brought along on the away mission through the kind of intuition of AL, is brought forward to the door and is able to eat through the door. And then they storm through the hole in the door that he ate, and they're able to collect the information, destroy everything, kind of put a virus into the system to take care of everything else, and able to use the blood wings. At this point, there have been a couple of Romulan patrols that have arrived, so the Enterprise is currently shields up, taking some fire, but the Bloodwing is still kind of playing like maybe they're a Romulan, or they're with the Romulans still. So at that point, the Bloodwing transports the crew of the Intrepid and all of the rescuers from the Enterprise and the Bloodwing to the Intrepid, where they kind of cold start the engines of the Intrepid, and all three ships take off out of there at super high warp. And I know this is an early TOS book, but these people start cruising at like warp 11. Well, you can't do warp 11. You're going to be turned into a salamander at warp 10. So, but anyway, it's fine. But anyway, the point is that they're making a high-speed escape from Romulan territory, and they're going as fast as they can. They have sort of outpaced the two ships, but the main Romulan bad ship, the Battle Queen, is right on their tail, and it is closing fast. This thing is apparently pushing warp 14, and they have mere seconds before this kind of Romulan battle cruiser closes in on them, fights, and takes all three of their ships out. Now they've at this point even taken the Bloodwing into their warp bubble to make sure that they can keep up. I think they're going warp 11. They're being pursued at warp 14. And right at the very last possible moment, these two streaks of light come fast. And who is it, of course, but the Constellation and the Inajao. And the Inajao, which is a destroyer class, flies past the Battle Queen and in a series of shots wipes it out and destroys it. So then all five of the ships then turn tail, head back to Federation territory. The mission a success, and thankfully, since they were able to use those kind of subspace buoys, like, no one's the wiser. Like, they've been able to kind of get in and get out and get it done. So cool, so cool. There's so many little moments in this book where you realize that some of these things were set up like far in advance. Like, first off, at the very end, when basically everyone thinks that it's over and the Battle Queen's going to catch them and they're done, and then these two ships come streaking in at the very end, McCoy and AL look at Kirk with this look like, you had this all planned, didn't you? And that's what I was thinking, like, right at the end. It's like, yes, this is like a real life 4D chess. Well, Kirk makes the comment at the end, like, well, you told me I should brush up on my game, Bones. So it was an interesting kind of parallel to the 4D chess game, where you have the ability to take pieces out of the game and then bring them back in at a strategic time. And that's kind of what happened at the end with him, with the two ships coming in at the end, which I'm sure that he had planned from the beginning. And then, of course, you also kind of see AL's overarching plan that she herself had set up the whole thing. Even Starfleet sending the fleet there, just by what she was able to do within the Empire to kind of send these little clues and signals that Starfleet should assemble this so that she could set this up. So, just really well done, really great book. Some insights from the book about books. which is lovely. If you read these things, read the book about books. But anyway, Diane Duane talks about this in quite a bit of detail in here. And basically, one of the things that she was looking to do with this book was to kind of flesh out the Romulans, which I think she did a really great job. And then also just to kind of put a character in front of Kirk that was kind of his equal, you know, not just someone that was like a lady like swooning for him. She was looking to write someone that would be kind of like that would kind of stump him somewhat, and kind of does in the end. So it makes me interested to see in the next three to or 4 books, I think, you know, is that relationship expanded along more? How exactly does the Bloodwing voyage play out? But I'm going to find out. So stay right there with me and make sure you do that too. Final thoughts on this, I would say, is just even standalone is like a fun little TOS book to read. Definitely fun to do. But I'm just now excited to kind of jump into this whole giant world of Rihannsu, which is, of course, the Romulan name for themselves, which I never knew until I started reading this book. So, as always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Live long and prosper, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.